here's another reason why you want to take control of what you're doing.
Everything kind of funnels into the only winning move is not to play the game.
So I got to ask permission to buy the gun, and then I got to pay to ask permission to carry the motherfucker outside of my house. How about you go fuck yourself?
Always love that intro, and welcome to another edition of the Weather Report. This is Bruce, aka the Weather Soul, here alone today, only because I decided to go ahead and give my other co-host Ken and Jason and Harkos the day off, to take care of their stuff. They've had a long weekend too. I've had a long weekend. I was golfing this weekend. I've got a whole bunch of honeydews that I had to do because I took a day off yesterday, and it's just been a real busy day. But I wanted to come in here and give an intro to the bonus content you're going to see today, which is the rest of the Shane Mekeland interview that we had last week of the House of Representatives guy from Minnesota. Excuse me. It's been a long weekend, of course. But I wanted to do an intro for you guys. And one of the things I wanted to say was I kind of found my niche here in the podcast that we're doing. And what I want to do is I kind of really want to fashion it back to what it was really about. And I'd love having guests on like Shane Mekeland. We're going to have our next guest is going to be Jason Stapleton from the Leverage Group that I belong to. And he's also a national podcast host that a lot of people heard every day. He had the #1 libertarian podcast in the nation for a long time. But I love having those people on. We're going to have more of those people on, but we're also going to revert back to what the weather report was supposed to be. And the weather report was supposed to be about organic gardening, homesteading, prepping, actually some music, some art, and just all those things kind of wrapped in together. And we've been kind of going a little bit away from that. And I want to kind of reel it back in. So some of the new episodes that will be coming out are going to be more about what's going on during the summertime, especially with our organic gardening, because me and Harkos do a lot of that. So we'll be posting a lot of content. And also one of my niches has been for a platform for other products and other people that are entrepreneurs that want to come on this podcast or want to actually, advertise their wares on our show. Now, whether they want to advertise on here, promote their wares on here, we would love to have them on there. So I'm inviting you guys that anybody who has a product or service out there that they're trying to get off the ground, this is the way to do it. I've been doing a lot of things right now on Nostr with Nostr and Facebook and X, formerly known as Twitter, because I want to call it Twitter all the time. So basically, I'm really just going to call it Twitter. But what I've been doing is I've been actually promoting their products. And right now, I'm doing a promotion on Kalakam Craft Coffee, which is a friend of mine, Bill, and his wife. They are up in Washington State, and they have some great coffees. And daily, I've been doing a kind of a sampling. They sent me 6 samples of their coffee, and I'm trying it out. And I want to get one of their subscriptions because I used to be a coffee subscriber to another company, and that has since gone out of business. And I don't do that anymore. So I'm finding another coffee. So I'm actually giving Kalakam Craft Coffee a voice. So not that they need it or anything, but I'm doing that out of the kindness of my heart because that's what I like to do. I like to promote really, really good products. And if you got a really good product that you want to promote, just send me a freaking email, Bruce@weathersoul.com. And that's how you get a hold of me. You can go to weathersoul.com and you can sign up for the monthly newsletter, which is coming out pretty soon for June. And it's chock full of information on what me and Harkos do on the gardening side. Really doesn't have anything to do with what's going on with anything else as far as the podcast is concerned. But you can catch us on Nostr, you can catch us on Facebook, you can catch us on Twitter. That's where we are. And when you want to watch a video or something that we put out, you have to go to either Rumble or YouTube. And just wanted to let you guys know that. So we just continued our discussion with Shane Mekeland. We're really excited that we had him on. Had a little technical difficulties trying to get him on, switching from one show to another. So bear with us the very start of the show, but it goes on and we go on for about another hour or so. And then it was really, really good. So on to the show. Here's Shane Mekeland and the bonus content. You guys have a great day and be good to yourselves.
Woohoo!
There he is. Well, welcome
Awesome.
back, Shane, for the after hours portion. We call this more Mekeland. So this is where we get a little more candid. I mean, you know, we like to do this. This will be another show that we do next week. That's what we do, one live show, you know, like we just did before, and then we can this show, and then we put this on when we don't have anything else to do. So just maybe a little bit more candid. You know, we don't have to get, you know, totally candid on stuff like that. If you want to do that, you can join us on Monday through Friday, you know, on the X, and do that stuff. And then we get really raw then. But I see
8
that
to 9. Yeah. 8 to 9 in the morning, our time, normal time.
Yeah, there you go.
No, I'm just trying to figure it. It's just the camera. Everything I do is opposite, so I'm just trying to.
Yeah, it's kind of messed up. Figure that out.
What do you think about the 100,000 people that were at the Trump rally this weekend out in New Jersey? Does that surprise you at all?
Everything about Trump surprises me because think about it, and I'm equal opportunity criticizer. But if you look at Reagan was a very charismatic individual. He had some amazingly good one-liners, but he was very popular within his base at the time. Then came Obama. Well, actually, let's back up. Clinton went on Arsenio Hall, played the saxophone, and a whole bunch of younger generation people going, that dude's cool. He likes to party. And so that became popular. Then Obama comes along, and he's very charismatic and could draw a crowd. I have never in my lifetime, which goes back to Reagan, seen a crowd that can be drawn by a stupid political entity. And I'm not saying Trump's stupid. I'm just saying, because most people think politics is stupid. They don't pay attention to it. And to actually attract 100,000 people, this is like a 1987 U2 concert, for crying out loud. Like, where does this come from? This is like the Rolling Stones on their retirement tour.
Exactly.
Or the Beatles, for crying out loud.
I mean, so I think the thing that astonishes me the most is that he was picking up. He wasn't picking up those kind of numbers in the 2000 or the 2020 election. He wasn't picking up those numbers, but he was getting some big crowds. And by contrast to what Biden was doing, where you had the circles of the little isolation circles of people. It was crazy. And to think about, and if you look at that contrast between both of the campaigns, and then you find out that Biden got 81 million freaking votes, I find that hard to believe. And I'm not saying that the election was stolen. I'm not saying that anything like that. I'm just saying it's extremely suspicious when somebody draws the masses out to their rallies. How does that not equate to the vote? I don't understand it. I mean, out of that 100,000 people that showed up in New Jersey, how many do you think vote?
So back in 2020, Trump went to Minneapolis, literally into the heart of the beast of,
Yeah, I remember that.
In a liberal state, the most liberal city within the liberal state. And it was at the Target Center, which is the home of the Timberwolves.
Yep.
And he packed that place.
Yeah, full.
It was packed. And so you look at all of these things and you ask yourself, how can one person, and I don't know what Target Center holds, 20-ish thousand maybe, give or take.
Yeah, I think it actually holds like 35,000.
But it's nowhere near
event like that.
US Bank Stadium, but
Right.
In capacity. But nevertheless, this thing was packed. And then there was people outside.
Mm-hmm.
And
couldn't get in.
Both for and against, because there were protesters out there. But how can a person show up in a farm field in the middle of nowhere as a political entity currently and draw these kind of crowds? Because I went to the one down in Mankato as well, which was at an airport. And you had to park flip a quarter mile away and then walk there. And the crowd that was there was enormous. I mean, I've been to probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 Trump things, maybe somewhere in there. I don't know if I'm going to be at the one. I doubt I'm going to be at the one this coming Friday, only because it's very clear that Speaker Hartman has already said she's going to make sure we're on the floor on Friday.
That's right. That's right. Keep all the Republicans that Trump could help in session. Keep them on the floor and working.
Well, and which is fine because I'm sure he'll be back. Either him or Eric. I mean, I got Eric to come to my little stupid little small town, and I'm not saying it's stupid, but the turnout was so amazing for a little town that's like, I think the population here is 3,000 something, and like literally 3,600, 3,800, whatever it is. And there were over 1,750 people there based on the Secret Service's estimation, what they judged it at. And they actually called me back after the fact going, what did you do? I'm like, what do you mean? What did I do? You don't know if you're getting scolded, right? You don't know.
Right.
And they're going, well, a surrogate never gets more than 200 to 400. And somehow you got like almost 2,000. I don't know. I think the people actually are that concerned.
In contrast, that same year, Biden, I was at it. Biden did a thing at the state fairgrounds, which is huge. Bruce, when you come out to back to the 50s, you'll see the fairgrounds. It's the nicest fairgrounds in the country, by none.
They're big.
But they had the truck, they had Biden there, and there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 people showed up. Press, they squeezed them all up in the front, and I was there. I looked at this, and I'm like, literally, where is everybody? And everybody was fully masked up, and it was like, and
that is what.
And Trump will bring 30,000 people in Minnesota together.
Yeah, and that's what confuses me because even during before Obama got elected, he was drawing that kind of crowd when he was
drawing big crowds.
He was drawing big crowds, and he landslided.
Yeah.
But
here's the deal. Here's the deal on that one. McCain and Palin were drawing big crowds too. That was the first rally I ever went to, as a McCain Palin rally in Blaine, Minnesota, at the airport. And I mean, they had World War II bombers there and stuff like that. There was a flyover. I mean, it was a huge event. And I'm like, he wasn't a popular guy. McCain was as far as I'm concerned, he was a douchebag. But
there was a douche canoe, but okay.
Yeah, well, I leave douche canoes for guys with the douche knob on the back of their head.
That's the other way of saying that he's a pussy.
Yeah, I didn't like him, and I just, I wanted to see the hot chick. So basically, I went there and I took my 13-year-old daughter to it, my wife, and it was the first time we ever, as a family, went and did anything like that, which was really interesting. But there was a few thousand people at this thing in this hangar, and he got up and did his little speech and did it out, and my friends, thank you, and fucking all the bullshit. I'm like, I don't like this guy anymore. But it was nothing like a Trump rally. I went to another Trump rally. I couldn't get in, and it was at the same place. He did one in the Blaine airport sometime. I think it was in 2016. It might have been, but there was one. I couldn't even get near the place. I mean, you couldn't get within a mile of it, and it wasn't because of Secret Service. It was because cars parked in ditches, and they're getting out and running and walking to I've never seen anything like it. And Minnesota has not the greatest record. They have a good record for people turnout, but the turnout isn't always people. Is from what I found. Tom Emmer, who's now he's in Washington, is part of the problem. But him and Stevenson, who was the Secretary of State, or running for Secretary of State, they had Simon. Yeah, Simon. That's right. So they were, they were at the courtroom because when Norm Coleman and Al Franken went head to head, it was super, super close, and they had to have recounts and things like that. And these guys, Tom Emmer, and it was Severson, Doc Severson.
Correct.
Not Doc Severson. It was Doc Severson.
Yeah.
It's easy, but these two guys were standing outside of a court with the evidence while the hearings were going on, and were not allowed in. They're like, we have the evidence of these votes were stolen and found, because the way Franken got elected was completely fraudulent. And
actually, in that election, it was like 102 votes that swung the thing, and then through the 12-month process, well after the court rulings had came and went, they stopped when they proved over 1,000 of those votes were invalid.
Right.
because there was many more to go, but there's no money to be spent. And so that was the proof, because it was Mark Ritchie was the Secretary of State back then.
Mark Ritchie.
And then I turned over to Steve Simon, and they are the orchestrators of some of the greatest election rigging, if you will.
Yeah. Say what it is.
They know how to do this. And I just got a conference committee report on elections. I just got it today. And so I was reading it before we got onto this thing tonight. And I was reading, anything underlined is new language. Anything stricken in the middle of it is language being taken out.
Right.
And anything that's just regular language is what was already there. And some of it was like kind of dumbfounding, that all of what they're putting into this thing. I'm actually trying to pull it up right now, because I was reading through it while waiting for this thing to start at, because I actually thought it was being at 8:00, not 9:00. So I was kind of here waiting for y'all to like show up. But
we were there. We thought you were on another interview. So,
well, no, in boredom, I did some other things, and then I told them I had to go. But so they went from 11,255,000 to 12,505,000. So they raised it 1,250,000 for stuff for elections. And then in 2026, they went from 11,069,000 to 12,319,000. But then there's other parts of this where, I mean, I could send this to you if you want to read it, Ken. I mean, this is like some of the most amazing read, because of all the stuff that they're doing, that when you get into the weeds of it all, which I'm just scrolling through it because I'm reading on my phone, but all the stuff they're doing to make it easier for people to vote, easier for, Bruce, you're in California. We have 46 days of early voting, both in the primary and in the general. Yeah. We have mail-out balloting. We have ballot drop boxes. We have all these things. If you mail your ballot, you've lost chain of custody, because you now have a postal worker that is handling your ballot between getting it to you and then sending it back. Yep. And if that postal carrier has an opinion about you based on the mail you receive, like if you're getting mail from, like Ken said, I get a lot of mail from Tom Emmer's campaign.
Right.
I may have a Trump sign in my front yard. I may be wearing a.
Yep.
And so they have an opinion of you based on what they see coming in and going out of your mailbox.
Yep.
Yes.
So
in my situation, we have 90 days of early
90?
voting.
Jesus.
90 days, 3 months of early voting. And we have mail-in ballots, and they prefer mail-in ballots.
Of course they do.
They passed something in the assembly that you have to sign the ballot now. Whether that fucking makes a difference or not, I don't know, because unless they're gonna match my signature to some other signature. I've had my vote stolen before. 2008 election, my vote was stolen. I went to go vote, and you already voted. I'm like, no, I didn't. And so I got to get in a preliminary vote. Did that other vote get quashed? I don't know. I never got a fucking receipt that said that it wasn't or not. See,
you can't unvote.
2016, or no, actually the 2020 election, I went and I asked for a receipt. What happened was that they started doing the you fill out your ballot, and then you personally put it into the machine to have it counted. It would not count my votes, so I had to sit there at the machine and re-vote through the machine. And then after that happened, and it finally corrected all my votes. How many times did I vote for a Democrat? I don't know, because I'm thinking that I probably voted for a Democrat 10 times to my one vote for a Republican, whatever the case may be. At that time, I was voting for a Libertarian or conservative ticket. The bottom line is at the end of it, I asked for a receipt. They go like, well, we don't give receipts. And I'm going like, okay.
Here's your I voted sticker.
Yeah. Here's my I voted sticker. Here's your I voted sticker.
Vote early, vote often.
Yeah, vote early, exactly. vote often. And So the only way that you got a receipt on a vote is whether you requested it through your mail-in ballot. You could not get one at the
Really?
polls. Yeah,
That's
it's crazy. So you can see, Shane, where I get a little perturbed when, like I said, I'm torn. I really am. I really want to participate. I do participate in my local elections. I don't feel like national elections really matter, but I mean, like I said, I'm torn. It's just one of those things that I'm just going like, shit, man. Sometimes you just want to throw up your hands and just cry.
No, I get that. Okay, Bruce. If we turned out in mass numbers, those that don't normally vote, those that don't think that their vote matters, everybody showed up in insane numbers. How much can they cheat and get away with it?
Exactly.
So when you're sitting on your street and the neighbor, on the other side of the street, 3 doors down, left or right, I don't really care. They're like a lifelong Democrat, and they're going, well, I didn't vote for Biden. How they win? And as these conversations continue to happen, and then we see right now they're saying, I
know everybody on my street. We're about 99% freaking conservatives.
but the ones that are not, right?
Yeah.
And if they say I didn't vote for them, so then who the hell did?
Yeah.
They know that. They know, and so this is the concern I have about early voting, and I know there are certain groups in the conservative movement saying vote early.
I hate it.
Well, but I can pull every 24 hours. I can pull a report, which will start probably as soon as we're out of session, where or once we start into early voting, I can see who has voted. I don't know what they voted for, but I know they voted.
Mm-hmm.
To which means I can stop calling them. I can stop mailing them. I can stop wasting money or time, energy, or effort. So if I can see it, so can they.
Yep.
So then you couple that with, if they could see all this and you have low propensity voters that may or may not vote, which we had 170,000 of them in 2022, registered Republicans that did not vote.
Yep.
Then they know they got 170,000-ish cushion, right? Because right up to election day, the day before, they can see all these numbers in real time. And now they know how much they can fudge what they need to fudge. And all of a sudden, the guy that you didn't want, you just got.
Well, and they funnel the ads. They funnel the people on the left, haven't been working in campaigns and stuff. There's apps and things. So you're walking by a house and it's following your GPS and it tells you who's in that house, what they voted for, what they ad for. And the Democrats have some really good programs for that. And the Republicans, I think, finally are now just starting to figure out, we're losing because it's not that we have the wrong message. It's just no one knows about it because the media, of course, goes far left and stuff like that. But just the grassroots people on the ground game that the left has, at least that I saw, was so much. And I lived in Andover and Ramsey. I mean, they were pretty solid conservative places, right? But once in a while, someone would pop up and give it a run for the money. And that's how you get a guy like Jim Abler that we were talking about before, because he had the union support. He had union support as a Republican, and he was basically a pro-life Democrat, and there was never a tax hike that he didn't like from what I saw. But what Shane's talking about. So now think about if you're the opposition party and you're looking at this and you already have this great machine with technology set up there. It's like, okay, these 10 houses on this block are always going to vote Republican. Don't even bother going there. You just walk right by them. We're going to take the time where they do. So these people here are independents. We don't know which way they're going to sway, but we can sway them if we get there first. And the other thing that the Democrats they go right for the minority communities, the inner city, all that kind of stuff. The only thing that Jim Abler did, I'll mention his name this last time, that I thought was good, because he ran to be senator of the state and they laughed at him. But one of the things he did is he went right down to the heart of the worst part of Lake Street and Lake and Lindale and that whole area there in Minneapolis, and walked in the parking lots at night and talked to people. I mean, he'd just go to the Target and the grocery store and stuff like that. And he was trying to reach out to people. And I called him, and I had just like lit him up at a BPOU meeting that we had in front of the whole thing. And the next night I saw him do this, and I called him. I said, Jim, I'm going to give you credit for this. I lit you up last night, but I'm fair. I'm fair and balanced. What you're doing right here is what more Republicans should be doing, is going and reaching out to the communities that we don't usually go reach out to. Because in Minnesota, they had no interest. If you look at the people running in Minnesota, city council, representatives, stuff like that. I mean, the people running against Ilhan Omar had zero support from the party. Zero. But they give a ton of support to somebody that like Peggy Scott, who is pretty good. They give her a ton of support. And I'm like, she's going to win no matter what. Why aren't you at least breaking somebody off and getting them into the cities and getting them into these other places? It drives me crazy. It's one of the reasons I got out of the political world as deep as I was. I was like, I just can't take it anymore because no one wants to do anything outside of their little circle.
So Shane, another question that I have, and like I said, I'm that guy. Have you been to Washington D.C.? Because I've got. I like to say, and this. Ken's heard me say this. Jason's heard me say this. Left, right, same bird. I'm sure you've heard. I'm sure you've heard the same thing. Whether or not that's prevalent in Minnesota, it is definitely prevalent in California. That Republicans and conservatives, are basically the same bird in the
Democrats.
In the same, Democrat, Republican, same bird in the assembly here in California, because we've got Tom McClintock here, who's a Republican here. But he's constantly voting with the Democrats. So I'm just going like, how the fuck can you be a conservative?
He's reached across the aisle.
So reaching across the aisle, right? So I guess, do you see that there? I know you don't see that there in Minnesota because I already know how you're aligned. Have you been to Washington D.C. and what's your opinion on that? Do you think right, left, same bird?
I have never been to Washington D.C.
Okay, that's
the closest I've made it is Niagara Falls, many years ago, 30 plus. No, I've never been there.
So what do you think about the opinion, though?
Well, I find it okay. Have you seen the recent video that James Carville just put out on how much the Democrat Party is screwing up and how they're losing? And James, if you're familiar with James Carville, he is the Clinton machine guy.
Yeah.
And I think in that video, he even claims that he's now 80. And he's like, we're totally pooching this thing. So he's seeing it, and he doesn't hold back. He actually drops the F-bomb in that video.
Yep.
And this is a video. I mean, maybe it's a fake one. I don't know. But I mean, like he literally goes all in. He was the one that years ago said, if you drop a $20 or a dollar bill and you drag it on a string or something, a whore will pick it up or something like that. But he is one of the most prominent Democrat operatives that campaign advisors. Like, he is the golden standard of the Democrat Party. And he is telling them, you're screwing this. Because he calls out, like, the more you indict Trump, the more you do all this, it's going the wrong way. You need to stop. So
even Bill Maher had I watched some stuff with him, and he was just like, hey liberals, I was one of you. You've moved way left of me. I don't know what you're doing now. I haven't changed. He goes, shut the fuck up about Trump. Leave him alone. Everything you're saying about him is putting more people in his pocket, and it voting wise, and just stop what you're doing to the guy. Because number one, and he even said, he goes, number one, it's wrong. I'm sure he did a bunch of there's lots of things you could probably get him on, but what you're going after is stupid. And they're screwing it up. And I saw that one with Carville too, and it was really interesting because he was calling him out. He's just like, you guys, your hard base is now looking to the right because of what you're doing to this guy.
Well, and actually, Bill Maher, about a year and a half ago, came out on the transgender thing and said, thank God my parents didn't take my words, because I would have a peg leg. a hook hand,
Yeah,
and an eye patch because I wanted to be a pirate.
he did say that.
He did.
Yeah.
And even Joe Rogan, which I think we can all agree, Joe Rogan has the largest audience of any podcaster out there.
Right.
He is kind of the new Rush Limbaugh, if you will.
Mhm.
He is certainly not the bastion of conservatism.
Not at
He's
all.
kind of a middle of the road kind of guy.
Yep.
And he's calling this stuff out. He's calling out the hypocrisy of bastardizing ivermectin from the medical community.
Yep.
And which I'm become very familiar with, but as far as that whole arena goes, but like you have these people who are super followed that normally wouldn't agree with us or agree with me anyway, that are going, I'm calling bullshit on this because it doesn't make any sense.
It's and they're just, Ted Nugent, the scholar, he said, if some is good, more is better, and this is what America has done. So now we've created this incredible country that we have so many first world problems that people just have to find something to fuck around with, and that's where I saw it when I was in art school. And back then it was the global warming thing was starting to rear its ugly head pretty good. Back then it was just LGB. There wasn't all the other alphabet letters, but they'd have, and I noticed this, and this is, I was a super liberal back then. I mean, like super liberal.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Well,
No.
I was
libertarian, maybe.
No, I was super liberal. I'm like, education needs more money, and
so
I'm
was I.
super anti-war, and
we have to indoctrinate our kids more. We have to.
Yeah. Well, I remember in high school reading the book that was given to us in our English class. And it was called The Constitution, The Myth That Binds Us. And it was a little flyer. It was the myth that binds us. And it was, the whole thing was explaining why these racist forefathers, slave owning jackasses, it's terrible.
Thank God.
It was basically like, if Karl Marx wrote a book about the Constitution, this was it.
Wow.
But I grew up in the 70s, and the Kennedys were the greatest thing in the world, and you just had to bow, and they ran everything. I mean, the Kennedys were like crazy, and you got to think about the Bulger brothers. One of them was Whitey Bulger was this massive gangster. His brother was the Speaker of the House in Massachusetts. I mean, literally, I'm not even making that's what they were. Wow. But so anyway, I moved out here, and Acorn. You talk about voter fraud. You'll like this, Shane. In Brookline, Massachusetts, my dad was the director of music there at the school system, and he directed like the marching band and stuff like that too in the high school. And some of the people that he had as students were Michael Dukakis's family, so we got to know their family pretty well, and not well enough to say don't do the thing in the tank, but we were like, all right. I get to school out here, and I'm like, it's 1988. I'm going to vote. I'm like, I'm going to vote for Michael Dukakis. Why? Because I'd met him, and I thought my dad would get to play his music in the White House if Michael Dukakis gets elected. So that's what I was, I'm like, everyone's got to vote for Michael Dukakis. He's the greatest thing in the world, And I'm like, well, obviously I was just an uninformed voter. But I'm in Minnesota. I'm not registered to vote. I'm here from Massachusetts. So Acorn, and I didn't know it was Acorn at the time, but I found out later, was going around to colleges and saying, hey, we'll take you to vote. Because in Minnesota, you can vouch for people. You don't need any, you can just say, nope, these guys are good. They can come in and vote.
Yeah.
And so they were, though this is so liberal. They were giving away packs of Marlboro cigarettes and a ride to the poll if you went with them. So it was like me, and I don't know, it's probably 8 or 10 of us that are out of state. Yeah, we were out of state, students. But what do we know? They're like, you got a student ID, and the guy's the official, and go, oh yeah, sure, get in the bus. Fuck yeah, you smoke? Yeah, well, here's a pack of Luckies or whatever. I'm like, I thought it was awesome, so I went and voted for Dukakis. So that vote was completely illegal, because I also had a mail-in vote from Boston too, which I didn't send in because I'm like, well, I already voted. I don't need to send this one in.
Well, at least we haven't kissed the ring yet, so the NSA and the FBI is not going to come after you yet. So
well, then Acorn started falling apart, and everyone in Minnesota is like, "Oh, this isn't true. This doesn't happen." I'm like, "That's again." I was a liberal. I'm thinking, it does happen actually. No one told us that we couldn't do this. No one that was driving us to the polls was saying that you can't do this. It was completely legal. I'm like, oh, okay. So all these people that maybe are the new Americans, you can just say, no, these guys, they don't need to speak English or anything, but just come on in and vote. And there was buses of them. You can do 16. I don't know if the laws changed. It used to be you could do 16 people. You could vouch for 16 people at a time. I think it's down to 8 now or something. They might have changed the laws a little bit, and you're going to tell me there's no fraud. Right.
Well, okay, you can vouch for somebody at this polling station.
Yes.
X number of people, but you can go to another polling station and you can vouch from there as well. And
they can be the same people.
That's insane. That's insane.
That's how you get 132% of the vote. We had precincts that had 132% turnout.
In 2012, when Obama got reelected, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Florida, there were precincts that had like more votes than they actually had population.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, like population, which understand you have a certain sector of the population that are felons, they can't vote. You have a certain sector of the population of 0 to 17 years old, they can't vote.
Right.
But they literally had more votes than the entire population.
And this is the same thing that happened in 2020, and I don't understand.
Nothing to see here, folks.
How can they say nothing to see here? Oh, it was the most secure election of all freaking fucking time.
Because of election judges.
Sorry.
Election judges matter.
And 81 million votes voted for Biden, which was more than Obama got. And he was like one of the most popular presidents of all time. So, I don't get it.
So to that, okay, they say it was the most safe and secure election, most safe and effective vaccine, by the way. So it's kind of similar language. But on that.
Vaccination.
Safe and secure. Safe and effective.
But on the safe and secure side, what I find really amazing is how many commercials do you hear for Norton antivirus or LifeLock or all these things, because anything electronic can be hacked. Anything can be. Yes. Except for that one machine. That one machine cannot be hacked. But every other machine, the one I'm sitting on right now, the two that I have sitting right next to me right now, there are two screens. None of this is all hackable. But that one machine sitting down there on that day cannot be hacked.
It uses different electricals. The electrons bounce differently inside of those.
That's because they go to Italy and China and wherever else they all go.
Yeah, it's the Area 51 unobtainium that they use in them or something, I guess. Well, and if you look at you look at what happened with Tucker Carlson, he got fired because that was part of that whole lawsuit to Fox, because they were saying, oh yeah, these machines are, he's like, these machines might not be what you think they are. And it gives me hope though, because all the people that Fox kind of threw to the wolves, you got Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, and the old guy, I can't think of his name.
Bill O'Reilly.
They all have huge platforms now, bigger than they ever were, online. So, it's pretty interesting. Did you remember Bob Davis, Shane? He was a morning radio guy. He was on KSTP for a while in the evenings, and they did a show, Davis and Emmer.
I believe so. Yeah.
It was a morning show. They got it up to, because it was Tom Emmer and him. And, they had some dissenting opinions. It was a really good show. They ended up being number 2 behind KQ's morning show in the morning. It's a pretty big deal. But again, Bob would question people. Tom wasn't going to question people. And I knew Tom, and honestly, Tom's a really good guy. He's trying to do the right thing. He's just, he doesn't want to stick his head up too hard. You know what I mean? He doesn't want to get hit too hard. And there's so many people like that. But Bob wasn't like that. He ended up getting fired for it. So he started a podcast, and that's what he's been doing now for the last 12 years.
Okay,
or so.
Ken, to that, look at Paul Wellstone.
Yeah.
Obviously, you and I wouldn't agree with him in our current.
Except I voted for him the first time.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but nevertheless, one thing Paul Wellstone, a very, very liberal guy, he was notorious for coming back and actually saying out loud the crap that he was hearing behind closed doors and exposing it.
Yep, he was.
And then it's really interesting. You can pull this up on your web browser. I don't specify which one you want to use, but his plane crashed into I don't know. You can call it a mountain or a large hill, whatever.
Oh, I remember this.
Yep.
And but the interesting part is, the FBI was on site within 30 minutes.
Yep.
And the distance between the office of the FBI in Minneapolis to Duluth is like 2-ish hours.
Yep.
and the lead investigator's last name was McCabe. I shit you not.
No
Look
shit.
it up.
Oh,
I got a question about your economy there in Minnesota. So, are you in charge, or are you on a committee of anything that has to do with the economy and the monetary systems that they use there at all? I mean, is that a totally separate department of assigned people or people that are? Tell me how that works out.
Here comes the Bitcoin.
So
Yep,
I was shaking my head no, but at the same time, yes. I guess now that I thought about it, I'm on energy and labor. That's my two committees that I focus on, right?
Okay.
That has everything to do with economy.
Okay.
If the ratepayers are paying more money for energy and that being industry, the cost of everything goes up.
Yeah.
And labor, everything that happens, what they push through that, the cost goes up. And all the regulation that goes along with all of whatever they choose to do. So like they have pushed a lot of bills last year that mandate a whole lot of regulation, which basically says you have to comply to all these new regulations, which would basically for like a simple house builder, a residential house builder, you would have to hire 5 people at the very minimum to be compliant, to mandate or to manage all the new regulations. But in the bill, it also said, this was the general contractor liability bill last year, excluded from this is that of organized labor.
So are you guys operating in the red, or are you guys operating in the black in Minnesota?
What do you mean?
How was the $17 billion surplus?
From a deficit standpoint to a standpoint to a budget standpoint, where do you guys sit? I mean, in California, we suck. So we were $32 billion in the black last year, back to $65 billion now in the red, because of the glorious magical stuff that Governor Newsom does. So I mean, in 1 year we went $90 billion in the hole, or $90 billion in the swing.
So okay, so where that is right now, we were, and Ken, it's not 17 billion. We had a $21 billion surplus going into 2023.
Right.
They then passed a law very early in this to articulate what the hell they call it, to account for inflation, which brought it down to $17.5 billion.
Oh, okay.
So it was really $21 billion.
Wow.
Is there
surplus?
And I think they actually thought it would bring it down further, but they blew that entire $17.5 billion budget surplus, or $21 billion surplus, and then they went on to spend another $10 billion going forward year per year. So what we're projected to be is in a massive deficit in 2026 and 2027, 2025 probably.
So similar. As California goes, here comes Minnesota.
Yeah.
Is
there-
Slowly trails behind.
Okay, whose dumbass dick is bigger, Walls or Newsom?
I think Walls is, because Walls at least pretended that he was some kind of a military guy.
Yeah. Is there any discussion about Bitcoin in Minnesota, the legislature at all? Let's separate crypto from Bitcoin. So let's say that.
I'm going to say some, but not much. I don't hear much about that. We have sports betting. We have legalization of marijuana, which is all going to the indigenous natives.
Of course,
they're getting free reign on all that.
Yeah.
But as far as like electronic currency, there's a big concern about CBDC, which is very concerning because
very.
And then there's a flex of, so if you believe in Bitcoin over here, how is that any different than the government forcing you into electronics? And the question that many have are, if the grid is so weak and you have all this Bitcoin, let's say you got $10 billion in Bitcoin, but all of a sudden none of your electronics work, you have nothing because the grid has been so compromised or what have you, then how do you get to it? So then there's this other facet of people saying, well, precious metals, lead, brass, and copper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've got answers to that, but it would take another show and a half to explain how Bitcoin works and the essence of what happens if the whole grid goes down. Because if the whole grid goes down, we have bigger problems than Bitcoin being gone. So I mean that's kind of where I'm at with it. But
right,
at
but
the time,
but Bruce, that's my point. That's where lead, brass, copper is the arbiter
exactly.
of something that's barterable. Because you hear all these commercials on conservative talk radio or what have you, conservative talk anything, to invest in gold and silver. Well, okay, I get that. You should divest some of your, whatever into different things. So if you walk into a store, you need a loaf of bread, and all you got is a 1 ounce gold coin worth $2,200, and you want who the hell's got that? Now, if you walk into the same damn store and you say, I got 2 9mm and four 223s, can I get a loaf of bread? Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. You're gonna get one,
or just a handful of bullets.
What concerns me is I just heard a report coming out of China before we got on this podcast, and I don't know how much propaganda it is or anything like that, but they have now gotten, if you do not have a digital ID in China, you don't get food. So I mean, this is the way that the CBDCs can be used in a nefarious way, where when you get into that compromised situation where the central banks are going to be able to issue these CBDCs, make them the normal mode of transactions throughout the world and within the United States, because the United States has a lot to do with what's going on with the Federal Reserve and the central banks. It kind of makes it scary that they can program that type of fiat, I want to call it fiat or transactional mode, to be able to be shut down, whether or not you have a certain type of ID, or whether you're acting right, or whether we said something wrong on this podcast,
Any
or
reason
whether
they
I drive the wrong
pick.
car, or whether I get stopped for a ticket and I didn't pay, whatever the case may be. They're able to program those vehicles to be able to do whatever they want. That is what most worries me about CBDCs and stuff like that.
Fair.
Yeah.
And it's actually probably even more beyond that, because that's where it's going.
Yeah, it just surprised me that I read that about the Chinese, about the China, that's what it is now. I mean, they have a social credit score. It isn't. Yeah, it's not a conspiracy theory. It's widely known, and they keep going for it. And I got friends of mine, liberal friends, that go to China, go like, "Oh, China's great," and all this stuff. And I'm just going like, I don't know what China you're into, but the other news that I'm getting out of it is just not as good as you think it is. But okay,
China's allowed just enough capitalism to be dangerous. That's what they've done.
I think so.
I've been working with China and Chinese made products and designed them and manufactured them for years, a couple of decades, and they've allowed if you talk to be careful. if you talk to people that come here from China, and you can get them outside of where they have to worry about what they say, the pictures they paint are very different. We had one lady that came to the Tea Party meetings, and she was God, I can't remember her name. She was from China. She was at Tiananmen Square when that happened. She was literally on the ground there, and she says it wasn't the one guy with the tank and stuff that got drove over. There was hundreds of people that got carted off. There was dozens of people that were killed that day that no one ever saw. All we saw was the guy in front of the tank. They let that out because they had to do something, and that was basically the thing to deflate the balloon. Because if they knew what really happened at Tiananmen Square that way, the whole world would have gone crazy. And she's sitting there in this room full of octogenarians that I'm talking to at the Tea Party. You know how those meetings went. After a while, it was just people just came every month to be entertained. They don't want to really do anything. And I'm listening to this woman, and I'm just my jaw is dropping. And I'm like, see, did this get any of you idiots to get off your ass and go out and do something? You're supposed to be activists. You're a goddamn Tea Party meeting. Oh, I went off. But yeah, so the shit with China is it's the same as Russia in the Cold War with us was. It's mutually assured destruction because China right now, if we go down, they go down financially. It's a financial destruction.
Yeah, I don't think it's coincidence that these, what is it, the new bird flus coming in from China, the thing that happened with Fauci, where they had the Wuhan lab, and whether or not it got leaked from there, or whether it was actually a jump from animal to human, the balloons that they're flying over the U.S. and Biden letting it go all the way across the United States before they shot it down outside of New Jersey, just a myriad of things. The Uyghurs, the absolutely obliteration of the Uyghurs, and the slaving of the Uyghurs there, and everybody's complaining about Israel and about Gaza and stuff like that, but nobody's protesting about China in the way that they're actually systematically genociding the Uyghurs and stuff like that. I don't think any of those are coincidences, and any of those are. It just surprises me that those aren't upfront and arguable protests that we should be mindful about, and that the people in the United States should be mindful about, because it does affect us. Those things, the bird flu. Guess what? What's coming up? November's coming up. So what are they going to do?
Some has to come out. Well, and Bruce, you're an engineer. I'm a product designer. The United States could completely cut China off if we just get our head out of our asses. This is the one thing that Trump came in and started doing, and he put the wrong people in place to do it. But to start, absolutely, this is where I liked Vivek, because he was just like, yeah, we're getting rid of this program, we're getting this program, this whole group of people are going away. There's not going to be this whole, get rid of the bureaucracy that's actually running things. We can manufacture stuff here really, really well. We're the best in the world at manufacturing. We still are, actually. But we went everything high end. So when you've got a guy at a Ford plant that you're paying $45 an hour to bolt bumpers on an F-150, that he's not even bolting them on, it comes down on a thing and comes over. St. Paul, there used to be a plant here. I used to go through it once in a while. And I knew some people that worked there, and they're making $40, $50 an hour. They've been there for 25 years. The plant closed because it wasn't affordable anymore. They built Ford Rangers, and it was a completely self-sustained piece of property. When Henry Ford built it, I think it was 1924, 26, somewhere in there. He built a power plant on there that was still operational. And it was still a very good. Toyota themselves came and said, you know what, we're interested in this. We can build cars in Minnesota for Toyota. And because of the government was so fucked up here, and all of the stuff that they wanted them to do environmentally, and we got to do this environmental study, and this is in a part of the area that used to be a different segment of society lived there, and we're trying to bring these people back. Instead of just going, all right, here's 15,000 jobs in downtown St. Paul. Here, they just left. We can bring them back. The people are still there. Now they're making Toyotas instead, but instead they didn't. So now they took it. They leveled the place down. And I don't know, Shane, if you've driven by the old Ford plant, what they're doing now. They were building apartments, and part of it was going to be like subsidized housing and
some solar
open space.
They built the Great Mall on the Ford plant here in San Jose, or in Milpitas, where it was. So,
Okay.
see,
We
these
gotta-
are the things. See, these are the things, Shane, that I, as an independent voter, because I'm not registered as a Republican. I'm not registered as any type of voter. I'm registered as dependent. And these are the comments and the views that I have when I see or listen to politicians and how they present themselves. And I appreciate you coming on the podcast. It's fantastic. I think you're a fantastic guy, and I wish you luck in your further endeavors in Minnesota. But I just wanted everybody to recognize that this is the type of voter that I am, and you between you and Ken, you guys can mold me. You can change my mind for 2024. And I just wanted to be sure that I got those comments and those questions in, so at least that you understand more than a lot of my constituents here, or the people that represent me here in California, who won't even freaking listen. I call them up, I letter them, I do all those things. I get a fucking form letter back. And I understand that that's probably the same thing that most assembly people or senators or representatives do, because you guys are listening and have questions every day. But it's very, very hard for me to get a hold of my representatives here in California unless I can do something for them. So I mean, I thank you for listening and hearing me out. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Hey,
Shane.
That's what we're here for. I think there's a lot that people, I don't know, don't see of what's going on, or everybody has their perspective of what it is they want and what it is where it should go.
Yeah.
And right now, there's a big difference between what is best going forward. And that's where the concern lies. And I see a big segment of the population that is like, when we started this, is it bad enough yet?
Right.
There's a lot that believe it's past that point. Yeah. And when you get to that, then you go, what's going to happen next? Mm-hmm. And I don't think any of us want to see that.
No.
If a fraction of the population feels that it's at that point, that there's no recovery, and I don't think anybody wants to see that. So now it comes down to, how do we avoid that, and how do we, which goes back to what Bruce asked earlier, as far as working with the other party bipartisanly, but they don't care.
Yeah,
how
that's the
bad
problem.
It gets. And that's where my concern is, because they keep pushing it. When I have half of the caucus on their side saying that I got to refer to him as she, which is clearly a him. I mean, it's got.
She has a beard, guys.
It has a beard.
Well, beard.
But not only that, but seriously, Ken, like this dude is like taller than me, and I'm not a short guy, but taller than me, and far more broad-shouldered than I am.
Right.
Walks like a flippin' Neanderthal. I mean, he has a stagger about him, like a typical like big dude. Mm-hmm. But yet we are required to say, will she respond to a question? So what we've all kind of done, which is capitulating, which is kind of bullshit, is, will Representative Finke yield to a question? So instead of saying, will she, we just say, or he, we just say, will Representative Finke yield to a question? And the dude's like, I don't know. I don't know what his deal is, but it's kind of like the same as that McVaney thing, whatever. I don't know the name. The Bud Light.
The Bud Light guy.
Yeah, it's the same thing. So you want to be famous. You want to be some kind of celebrity status. You sucked at acting. You sucked at singing. You sucked at politics. You sucked at everything. You can't accomplish anything. So go try this and just bust the balls of the world, and you will all of a sudden be popular.
Yep. And it worked.
And it did.
And it worked.
Yep.
And now everyone, why am I saying everyone? A lot of people are doing. We had a discussion the other day, Shane. And this is something that, because we are all who we are, it will never happen. But the way to shut this all down is show up at all these events and things like that as MAGA Republicans and straight men in dresses, and make them accept it. And then it's kind of like when you're a kid and you're doing something, you like listening to music and stuff like that, and your parents hate it, and as soon as they start liking your music, you don't want to listen to it anymore because it's not cool anymore. That kind of thing, you know.
Well,
and I said, there's the answer to shut all this down.
Play their same game. Play their same game.
Play that. Just play that. I know we say that not to play the game, but that's one that you could try. And if you watch people do it, there was a guy that just went into a protest, one of these college protests for Palestine, which was just the absolute dumbest thing I've ever seen. And he went in as just a guy going to walk through it, and he was a black dude that was just, hey, I'm peaceful. I'm just walking through, going to see what's going on. Tell me about your protest and no one, of course, knew what even they were talking about any of it. But then they started to come at him, you know, and be like, oh, you got to get out of here with that camera, and we can tell you're not down with the struggle. And he's like, no, I'm just going over there, and I'm going to walk through. And I don't promote violence. In fact, I hate it, but there's times when it's absolutely necessary. And you had these little snowflakes like coming up to this guy and be like, you know, and he'd slap their hand away and be like, don't touch me, you know, don't put your hands on me. And they're like, oh, they don't know what to do. Because when you get right down to it, some of these people just need to be punched in the face.
Yeah.
You know, and the Antifa people and all this kind of stuff, when they came to Sturgis, and you didn't hear about this in the news, but there was a bunch that came to Sturgis and in Deadwood, and we're going to do this big protest and show all these bikers. It lasted 8 minutes, and it wasn't it was, and the cops handled it, but they were like, they knew.
Glad the cops handled it.
They knew. They're like, we're going to let the cops arrest us or move us away because this isn't going to end well. And this is we need an uprising. And like I said, I don't promote violence, but there's times when they're being violent. You can defend yourself, and you know, these protests on the roads and stuff like that, and someone gets driven, someone's going to get killed.
Yeah. And
driven over because of these things. And that's awful. I don't want to ever see that happen. But in Minneapolis, remember the trucker in Minneapolis? The guy was coming up, and they closed the road because there's a protest there, but they closed the road after this semi truck drove through at 70 miles an hour, right? And he didn't know that. And you come over the hill, they because they're idiots. These people are not thinkers. They're not going to do it at the top of the hill. They're going to do it after the crest of the hill. This guy comes rolling up over the top of the hill in a semi truck at full highway speeds to like 200 idiot protesters out there protesting God knows what. And amazingly got that thing switched back and slowed and roughed off to the side, and all the protesters went after him.
They actually beat the shit out of him.
Yeah, and they beat the shit out of him.
He was an Eastern European immigrant.
Yeah, that's right.
From Russia area, if you will. Yeah, I actually have a good friend that knows him really well.
Oh, really?
Yes, and they are so lucky that tanker was empty. It's 9,001 gallons to a tanker in Minnesota. And if you multiply that by the weight of the liquid, if that thing would have been full, they would have all been smoked.
Yeah.
Many of them. And I'm not saying all of them, but many of them. Because to stop 9,001 gallons of liquid fluid, when you haul fluid, when you hit your brakes, there's actually a double pump. Because once you're applying your brakes and you're clamping down, then all of a sudden all that liquid comes slamming forward.
Inertia works.
Thrust, and you will push through whatever is in front of you.
Yeah. Right. It's funny how physics works.
They do it all the time when like a deer runs out in front of them. You'll lock up the brakes, everything's slowing down, and then all of a sudden you get the rush of the momentum, the energy of all the liquid, and they have baffles in them. It's literally 9,001 gallons in a tanker truck in Minnesota. It's 14,000 in Michigan because they're more remote. But so they allow more. I spent many years in the petroleum industry, but nevertheless, like they are so lucky. And in talking to people, including that whole everybody affiliated with that story, because Ryan Winkler, who was the majority leader in the House then, had tweeted out stuff that was very disparaging to this driver. And then his truck got completely destroyed.
Yeah, they dragged him out.
Yes, they beat the shit out of him. And he then was persecuted by the political system.
Yeah, that's right, because they arrested him.
Yes.
That day, the driver got arrested.
Correct.
They beat the shit out of him, and then the driver got arrested. I love it. I love it. Fuck.
But so anytime, okay, I don't care what state you live in, like Bruce, when you're on an on-ramp going on to interstate, there's this little sign that talks about, pedestrians on the road is not permitted.
Yep.
However, it's all worded. It's very smallly worded. You can't read the damn thing because it's very fine print compared to the speed you're going at. But they literally went after this guy at all costs. I think he ended up doing okay. And it goes back, Ken, to you, what we talked about earlier, is the day after that incident, Marjorie called me and said, you know everybody. You must know somebody that knows this guy.
Yeah.
So I called a friend of mine that we were once business partners, but he came from Russia. And those two they go to church together. And this friend of mine, former business partner, his wife and that guy's wife, the truck driver's wife, are super tight because these Russians all stick together.
Right.
It was one of the most amazing things. So we managed to pull it all together because Marjorie wanted to start a GoFundMe, Give, Send, Go, what have you.
Right.
And just to have a defense. So this is how small this world gets at times, but nevertheless.
Yeah, that was a bad deal, and it disappeared because as soon as the narrative was, it was just a huge mistake, and your protest was in a bad spot. As soon as that happened, it evaporated from the news. I mean, because the local news was all over this thing. They had live coverage, and there was choppers flying above, and they had the whole deal.
That's crazy.
Because it was COVID, and there's nothing else going on.
Right. Got to have something to talk about.
So anyway,
Shane,
I've finally got to go. I got to head out too.
Yeah, it's been great to have you, Shane. Again, thank you for the bonus content. I'm sure that our listeners are going to enjoy every minute of it. And again, you're welcome to come back on the podcast anytime. Are you going through a re-election bid right now?
I will be in election this year.
Absolutely. Well, you can absolutely come back and say, come on, let's go, Shane. Like that. But no, I really enjoyed having you, man. You really opened my eyes to some things. I'm glad you've opened my eyes bigger than Ken could. So, and Ken tries his best for me all the time. I'm that old codger who just gets tired of shit.
So you notice your stuff is getting a little gray down here.
Yeah, there we go.
So is mine.
I'm glad I got that now because I almost got all shaven off. Usually on Mother's Day, I shave this all off because my mom hates my facial hair. But
so is the facial hair getting gray,
or
the head hair getting gray, or the receding hairline?
Yeah.
Is that politics or is that children or family? I don't know.
I don't know.
What I do know is times there's challenges at times. There's no such things as problems. There's simply opportunities and challenges.
I like that.
So we have the opportunity to lead and create a path for others to follow, a much better one than what they're currently following, because right now they're following indoctrination and in a path that I think is really not good for the younger generations.
Absolutely. Great.
Well
thank
said.
you very much. I appreciate it, man. And that'll do it for the weather report tonight. Excellent bonus content with Shane Mekeland. You can grab this on your audio podcast on any of your popular podcast apps, and you can always find this on Rumble #1. And sometimes we'll go off to YouTube, but we're getting off of there. But I want to thank my panel, Ken from Mad K Studios, Jason from Horrible Designs.com. And Chris is missing, but Harkos was supposed to be here. He missed out on tonight. Again, Shane, thank you for being here. Again, hey, I wish you guys the best of days, and be good to yourselves. We'll see you later. Take care.
See ya.